Hey everybody, today I'm taking a look at a small box card game called Cabo. This is designed by Melissa Limes and Mandy Henning. It takes around 30 minutes to play and it accommodates 2 to 4 players. So this is a memory style game where you're trying to get as few points as you can, and the game is going to trigger when somebody has reached 100 points, and you have a look who scored the fewest points by then, and whoever has scored the fewest points will be the winner. So the setup is going to look like this. So I've set up a game here for 2 players where you're going to have 4 cards distributed to you at random that are placed face down in front of you. You're going to have a communal deck of cards. You're going to have 1 card starting on the discard pile face up, and you're going to have a little reference card each as well. Now I will say straight up that I think this game plays best at 3 players, but I've only used 2 players here just to give some more simple examples. But yeah, for me, the pinnacle of this game is playing it at 3 players. But let's take a look at what you can do in this game and how it actually works. So on your reference card here, you can see that you've got 3 main actions you can take. And your turn is going to consist of taking one of those actions. So you can either draw from the deck, you can draw from the discard pile, or you can call Cabo. But what you're trying to work towards in this game is to have the lowest total value of cards in front of you. And these cards are going to range from a value 0 all the way up to a value 13. And you're going to be using these actions to try and decrease these values by the time someone calls Cabo, which will trigger the end of the round. So let's show you how that works. So on my turn, I can draw a card from the pile here and have a look at it in secret. So you can see this is a number 2 card, which is very good because, as I said, it ranges from 0 all the way up to 13. And prior to doing this, I would have had the opportunity to look at 2 of my cards secretly. So this one here is a 2, which is another good card. This one here is a 12, which is a not so good card. And we can ignore the keyword here when it's in front of us. So what I might choose to do is, knowing this 2 here, I will take this 2 and I will swap it with that 12 that I have here, and that 12 will go in the discard pile like so. So I've decreased my value, which is a very good thing. Now, whenever I draw a card from the pile here that does have a keyword on it, so let's say I drew that 12, I can use the ability on it, such as swap. So what I could do, I could take one of my cards and I could swap it with another player. So let's just do that just for fun's sake. I'll take this card and put it in front of me like so. Another thing I could do is I can spy. So I could actually have a look at what the card is of another player. So I could maybe look at that one here. So I know they've got a 0, which is very good. And those 2 cards kind of work together. So you can spy and then you can swap. As long as you remember that card was low, you can swap one of your high cards with one of their low cards. The other card that you can use is a card called Peek, which lets you look at one of your own cards, because normally you can only ever look at your cards once. You can look at 2 of them at the start of the round, and that's your only opportunity. And from then on, you are relying on your memory. Now, something else you could do when you draw a card is, let's say I drew this 0 here, is you can swap multiple cards for a single card as long as they are all of the same type. So as the game's developed, I might know quite confidently that these 2 cards are a 2 because, again, I've acquired them, I've maybe peeked at them, or I knew from the beginning. I can take those cards and swap it with the other one. So let's say I draw this 0 here, and I'm going to say I'm going to swap that 0 for these 2 cards like so. I've successfully proven that they're both 2s, therefore I can discard both these cards and take the 0 in front of me to decrease my total value of cards to 3, which is a very strong action to take. The second option you can choose works pretty much in the same way, but you're doing it from cards with a discard pile. So you've got to be very careful about the opportunities you leave to other players. You know, when there's a low card here, you want to be making sure that you get in there quickly. So let's say I took that card there, I could swap one from in front of me and put it like that. But something you do have to consider is that when you take a card from the discard pile, it remains face up in front of you. So the other players have more kind of information on your current value. And the final option here is the call Cabo action. So whenever you are confident that your values are very low and you could beat the other players, you can call Cabo. And when you do that, that consists of your entire turn. Each other player is going to get 1 more action to do what they want. Obviously, they're not going to call Cabo, but they can choose to, again, swap cards with you. If they draw that card, they can draw new ones and so on, just trying to get that total value down. And once that's been resolved, everyone's taken their turn following that Cabo being called, then everybody is going to reveal their cards, like so. And then you are going to calculate who's got the lowest figure. So you can see here, the person who called Cabo has a very good value of 3. This is pretty much as good as it gets. and this person here has a total value of 4 all the way up to 15. So this is quite unfortunate that they could not get rid of this swap card, but a total value of 15 is not too bad, but in this example it's not quite good enough. And then what you're going to do is that you're going to distribute points out accordingly. So if you successfully called Cabo and you did have the lowest value, then you are not going to score a single point, which is good news. And all the other players are going to score points equal to the value in front of them. So this player would score 15 points. And as I said, you're going to keep tallying up those values round after round until somebody reaches 100 points or over. And if somebody reaches over 100 points, then you're going to work out who's got the lowest amount of points, and that player is going to be the winner. Now, if I was to call Cabo and I was not successful, as in another player had a lower value me, so let's say this player called Cabo, they had 15, this player had less than them, they would gain their points plus an additional 10 points. So you've got to be very careful about when you call it, and you cannot just call it on a whim. There's also some shoot the moon style mechanisms in the game, so you can take this kamikaze approach where if you end the round with the 12, 12, 13 and the 13, then basically you will score no points and all the other players will score 50 points. But I've yet to see this happen, but it's quite cool that it's in there. There's an additional mechanism where if you end the round on exactly 100 points, which again requires quite careful tailoring, you will automatically reset your score back to 50. And again, I've yet to see that happen, but it is possible. But again, something else to shoot for if you are a bit desperate. Okay, so let's share some thoughts about Cabo. So first up, 9 times out of 10, I do not like memory games, or I do not like memory in games at all, because I have a terrible memory and they tend not to work for me. For some strange reason, the memory aspect of this game shines through wonderfully, and it adds a lot of fun to the game, because you only ever have 4 pieces of information to memorize, the 4 cards in front of you, and you only start by knowing 2 of them anyway. So there's not a hell of a lot you need to remember, but as you start peeking at your own cards, maybe you know all your cards, or you can start spying on other people, or remembering what people swapped with you and stuff. It starts to become a bit more interesting and a bit more dynamic, and the mistakes you make from memory is what actually makes this game fun, because somebody might end up stealing, a number 0 from you and replacing it with a 12, and you end up moving a card that you thought was a 12 and swap it with another card that's even higher. So, and that spinning the pace and understanding what you have in front of you is where the fun really lies. And that ongoing tension of, when is the time to call Cabo? Is my number low enough to do that and to win? Bearing in mind that once you call Cabo, everybody else except you gets 1 more turn to manipulate their cards. And if you call Cabo, they're probably going to know that you're in a good position to probably win the round. So therefore, if they draw a swap card from the deck here, then they can end up swapping one of the high, meaty numbers with one of your really low ones. And that can be massively impactful on the winning condition at the end. If you do not win Cabo, then you're going to score that additional 10 points, which can be game-breaking. So I love that tension of when to pull the trigger. Is the time right now? And fingers crossed they do not draw a really low card to bring their value down, or to draw one of those swap cards to mess with your score. I also like the fact that the higher numbers do have the abilities on them, because you're probably never going to voluntarily take a high number like this and put it in front of you, but you will always use the ability on it. So that's great, and I think that's a really good balance between the low numbers being great, but the high numbers still being very useful. So you're never really having a dud turn of just drawing cards for the sake of it and not doing much with it. And even if you do end up drawing a card that's decent, not like an 11, but let's say you drew something like a 6. It's not too bad, it's not great, but it's not bad either. If you're not willing to take the gamble to replace one of your cards and you put it out there, somebody might know for sure that they have a 12 in front of them and can therefore swap that face-up card with one in front of them. So they're always at that option, that contingency plan there. But with the additional wrinkle that if you do take a card from the discard pile, then it's going to be public information. And public information is quite deadly in this game, because again, knowledge is power in a game like this, and really does influence on your on the chance that you're going to call Cabo or not. Now, I know we're not talking Terra Mystica level decisions here, but I will say that the decisions you have to make in the game are interesting, and particularly when you're relying on your own memory, and the mistakes you make along the way do make some really funny moments. So yeah, just considering how simple and almost silly the game is, the decisions are there, Yes, there is a lot of randomness in this game, based on pure card draws there, and sometimes you'll start the game just with a bunch of really low cards, and you can quite confidently call Cabo really early, or at least think you can, because if you peek at these two cards at the start of your round and they're a 0 and a 1, and you think, you know what, right from the get-go, I'm going to call Cabo and hope to catch everybody else off guard. And sometimes that'll work for you, and there's not really much the other players can do about it because they just haven't had the turns in order to bring their values down. But sometimes that does work against you, because you might have a 0 and a 1 here and think, you know what, the chances of having two 12s here are very low, so I'm going to go and call it now. And then you end up having really high cards there, which will end up coming back and bite you in the ass. So it does quite work well that way, and it works for the game. The swinginess and the randomness of the draw do not hurt this game at all, because that's what this game is all about. So yeah, I've got no issues with balance or swinginess. I think it works perfectly fine for the type of game that Cabo is. The time investment of the game is about right, especially when you are playing at that 3-player count, which, as I said earlier, is really the sweet spot for me. I think 2 players is a bit too head-to-head. It works perfectly fine. It's definitely my second favourite player count, but the 4 starts to go on a bit too long, and it goes more towards that 45-minute mark, which I think is too long for a game like this. So you definitely want to get this set up, played and packed away in less than 30 minutes. And that 3-player mark, you can easily get that done, and it just gives you someone else to keep your pulse on. And to understand what they're working with, rather than just one other player. So yeah, 3 players is the sweet spot for me, not only for the enjoyment of the gameplay experience, but also for the timestamp, uptime, and all that other stuff. So yeah, 3 players, this game really shines. I think the production of this game is spot on, at least in terms of the artwork and card quality. Very nice, bright, vibrant artwork, nice clear numbers on them, and nice clear keywords on them as well. The artwork is kind of this fantasy style art and these cartoon characters that look fantastic and work for the game perfectly. Nice linen finished cards as well, so they're really nice to shuffle and play with. Now this is the deluxe version of the game, which basically means that you get another deck of cards that are exactly the same, just for different backs. And the idea of this is that whilst you're playing with one deck, you can shuffle the next deck, so you can just get the next round played straight away. I do think this is completely unnecessary, and I would have preferred this just to be half the box and to have a small, just one deck inside the box. The score sheet is really nice, and you get a lot of use out of that, and you're never going to need any more. But yeah, no issues at all with the production, except for the additional deck being unnecessary cost, really. And the interaction in this game is fantastic. Even though you are constantly messing with other players, which generally I don't like, it works perfectly fine for this game, because you are only working with the aim of helping yourself. If you know, or you spied on somebody and you know they've got a 1 over there, you know you've got a 12 here, of course you're going to play that swap card to mess them around and hopefully call Cabo and win the round. But despite being, I suppose, somewhat in your face, it's not that bad, and it works for the game. It certainly doesn't leave you feeling salty, and it just has a fun feel from the get-go with this game. So I love the interaction, and knowing what you have and knowing what your opponent have, or at least having an educated guess, is a lot of fun. Okay, so final thoughts on Cabo. I will say this is probably one of the most difficult games I've ever had to rate, because this game has no right to be as good or as fun as it is in practice. Reading the rulebook, I thought, is this all this game is? It's basically a memory game. You're messing around with your cards, swapping them with other people, and I'm trying to get the lowest numbers. That's all the game is. But for some reason, there is some quality to this game, there is some magic to this game that I cannot put my finger on. It just works way better than it should do. So I really do recommend this game, or at least trying this game out, if you are at least open to the idea of having a little bit of memory in your gameplay. I generally don't like game memory at all, so use me as an example, but I still really enjoy this game. I've tried it again and again, and every time it has been a success for the table, I always think, was that last gameplay a fluke? Did it just work well on that occasion? Was everyone in a good jovial mood, and therefore it kind of gave the impression that it was good? And then I try it again, and it still exceeds expectations. So yeah, it's a very difficult game to rate. Do I give it a shield of quality, considering how easy it is to play and how simple the rules are? I feel like my heart says yes, my head says no, because there's nothing to it. But I think for now I'm going to sit on just giving this a recommendation if it appeals to you. Use your own intuition to see if this is going to be right for you. But I think it's great. For now, this is staying in my collection. It's consistently hitting the table, and especially when you have that 3-player count with someone who's maybe not a seasoned gamer, somebody who's getting into the hobby, or even a non-gamer, they're going to have a lot of fun for this. Making those mistakes is where the fun really lies. Swapping cards with higher cards, which you really didn't want to do, is create some real fun, laugh out loud moments, and that tension of when am I going to call Cabo is where the money lies. So yeah, check this one out. It's very much a hidden gem, and as I said, has no right to be as good as it is. That is Cabo.